Hey, Ian here at the top of the episode just to mention a couple of things. First, we're discussing a bunch of different songs without being able to actually include those songs in the podcast itself. So I'm going to direct you to the mentions and references playlist Cleo made for this episode. It should be right in the video description. It's something she does for every episode, but for an episode like this, it might be particularly useful to have. Second, we just wanted to put a blanket content warning at the top of the episode for discussions of reproductive health, including miscarriage. Much of the album we're discussing was written in the wake of the songwriter's own miscarriage, and we do discuss that a bit. So we just wanted to make people aware of that at the top, since it might not be obvious based on the episode title or description. And with that out of the way, let's get to the episode.
We probably should
Yeah,
wind up.
let's wrap it up.
My dog is
your dog,
unhappy.
your dog is going to want food.
He's he's okay. He doesn't have to eat at 4:30 on the dot. I think he's mad at a delivery person. He's not yelling at me.
He might have heard
But
that the dog days are over and got scared.
he might have heard it and been like, "Are they though? Are they?" He does run fast. Like, are they though?
Hey everyone, welcome again to Cleo and Ian Catch Up. I'm Ian, and I'm here with Cleo.
Hey guys.
Yeah, and we are, for the sake of anyone who's listening to these in order or something, uh, I, I need to stop so I can get. I said I wasn't going to perseverate about things. Anyway, for if you are listening to these in order or curious, we're kind of picking up after the last discussion, but with a more specific topic. We talked in the last episode a little bit about Florence and the Machine and some of the stuff we want to talk about there, and that is the subject of this episode. We're going to be talking about the new Florence and the Machine album that released on Halloween, I believe. Everybody Scream, which I've listened to a couple times, and I've done a little like digging with like looking into the meaning of lyrics or background on stuff. But Cleo, I think you have been a longer Florence and the Machine fan than I have. So would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mentioned this on the previous the previous episode where I said I had spinal surgery. Okay. I said, we'll circle back around to this. My best friend got me into Florence the Machine October of 2017. And I remember this because I was watching a lot of horror movies on Turner Classic Movies at the time. And in fact, I watched the Frankenstein with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. So we will eventually talk about Frankenstein. So it was a very like Halloween kind of mood. Florence, big Halloween vibes, totally makes sense. Loved the song Howl, another big kind of horror movie vibe. And then my back collapsed. I had a herniated disc. I had to lie in bed in massive amounts of pain for 6 weeks, waiting for them to work me into the surgery schedule. They did a great job getting me in that soon, let's put it that way. So I had two music playlists. I was basically playing match 3 games. I couldn't sleep. Whatever drugs they had me on, you'd think they would just knock me out. I was getting 1 hour of sleep a day.
Man.
I was awake for like 23 hours at a time. It was awful. So I had a Britney playlist, right? Not even stuff like Stronger. I mean, no ballads. It was just pure stupid dance pop stuff. Love it. Absolutely love it. It was nothing emotional at all. And I needed that because I just needed a thumping dance beat in my head to just not think. And when I got tired of that, I would rotate back to my Florence playlist. And that was more, she experiments with a lot of different styles. She has literary references. It was something when I was ready to kind of think about something.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I would listen to Florence. Also because I was just kind of obsessed with that band currently at the moment. And so she already had, I think, maybe 3 albums out at that point. And so that's kind of the origin story of, to me, I'm a latecomer
Yeah.
because I came in 3 albums into it. I think her first one was in 2009. So she's been around a minute. But it just really got me through a really, really tough time.
Yeah.
So the albums that are clearest to me as being albums unto themselves are the last 3.
Gotcha.
Everything before that is just, yeah, it's just kind of one big playlist jumble. So I can speak a little better to what's going on with Everybody Scream because it is a distinct album to me.
Hmm. Definitely.
But that's how I got into it.
Yeah. So Florence and the Machine is one of those artists that I always tell myself, oh, I should listen to more because, to be fair, like my introduction to Florence and the Machine, as it was for a lot of people, I'm sure, was the song "Dog Days Are Over." Like that got a
Yeah.
ton of radio play, and I liked the sound of it, but the song itself just didn't do much for me. It wasn't like I thought it was a bad song or anything. It was I'm very much about finding that like emotional connection with stuff, whether it's music or art or literature or whatever. And I've talked about it in like previous podcast episodes. I think maybe even on Staying on Theme. But and I for whatever reason I wasn't connecting with the song emotionally, so I was like, okay, it's cool, but maybe it's just not for me. Um, as I have since learned, it's there are a few artists out there where I hear their big single and it doesn't do much for me, and then I hear the rest of their stuff and I'm like, oh wait, there's actually a ton of stuff here that I really really like. Like that happened to me with. I'm still not super into like a Modest Mouse, but I remember when they came out with Float On, I got so fed up with that song because it was one of those songs that I heard on the radio all the time. I think that came out when I was in high school, and so it was the sort of thing where like, oh, it's on the radio on the bus, and I can't get away from it, and whatever. But started listening to some of Modest Mouse's other stuff, and I was like, oh, there are tons of songs here that I actually do enjoy. Why is that their single? um, but similarly with Florence and the Machine, Dog Days Are Over, I was like, okay, it's kind of a cool song. Didn't do much for me, but I think I might have even listened to the album that that song is on. But that's another thing that
Gonna
happens to me with.
pull it up and look.
Yeah, that's another thing that happens to me with artists sometimes is I'll listen to an album of theirs and on the first listen I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then the more I listen to it, the more I'm like, oh, actually no, there's something I really dig about this. That happened to me with Foo Fighters, Echo Silence, Patience and Grace. That happened to me with Mumford and Sons' first album, and like with Florence and the Machine, I can feel that happening with Everybody Scream, where like the first listen to it, it kind of ties into a theory I have about a lot of media consumption or art consumption, where that first experience is kind of just learning the lay of the land. But if you do come back to something on further listens or playthroughs or watches, now that you know the lay of the land, you can actually oftentimes appreciate it more. Like I think about this a lot with movies where a lot of people talk about preserving that first experience, especially if a movie has like a big twist or something. And there's something to be said about that. But a lot of the stuff that really sticks with me is the stuff that I do go back to, and once I know the twist or whatever, you're able to appreciate so many other things. And so with something like Florence and the Machine, I think I needed to kind of just learn the lay of the land a little bit more before I could really dive in and appreciate the nuances and the things that I really do love about her stuff, which is like she's such a like raw, authentic songwriter. Her voice is incredible, and
Yeah.
she has this through line between like contemporary pop music all the way back to like medieval renaissance. Like you sent me the chamber version of the album the other day, and it has those like very they sound very like renaissance baroque or chamber music arrangements of several of
Yeah.
the songs, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This sounds like something that I could go to like a big concert hall and hear performed, and it would take me back to like the 1400s with minstrels and stuff.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I don't know if he liked the album, but this will get him if it didn't. I was like, let me I forgot to tell you, but by the way, she's got these 4 songs.
Hmm.
They're on YouTube. I'll put them on a playlist. This is going to be the playlist of all playlists
Hmm.
since it's music. I'm looking at it now because Dog Days is from the early
Yeah.
mishmash days. That was her first album. That was the
Hmm.
first song on her first album, which Howl, my favorite song, is also on.
Oh yeah.
Like it is very Florence, but there's a lot of stuff that's very different. And
Hmm.
it is the kind of thing where, my best friend introduced me to her, but we also like different songs.
Hmm.
Like we don't even necessarily like the same songs. So it makes sense to be like, okay, tell me where to start with this. If I know what your taste in music is, here's more what I would push you towards.
Hmm.
But like Cosmic Love, same album, is one of her really big songs. And like I like it okay. It's not my favorite.
Yeah.
Dog Days, it's a great song. It doesn't necessarily, my favorite use of it was someone had a video, maybe TikTok, and it was they were driving past their farm and they had 2 farm dogs and let them run and outran the truck, outran the tractor, whatever it was. And it was so great to see this unbounded, joy of this dog loving to run. It was an extremely literal interpretation, but it
Yeah.
worked so well.
Hmm.
It doesn't hit me in any kind of personal
Yeah.
experience. So, of the albums she's done, she is a very personal
Hmm.
songwriter. Her music is deeply personal. She might write in character sometimes because I know a lot of artists
Yeah.
very much they're not writing about themselves. They are writing as a character. This current album feels very, very personal.
Oh yeah.
So it's different in that sense. It's more connectable maybe than
Hmm.
some of the earlier songs.
Yeah. So
It's great.
so
I mean,
yeah, how do you want to approach this? Do you want to like start with your favorite songs? Do we want to do like I feel like if we did a track by track thing, it might we would probably diverge from that very quickly, and it also might take longer than we really want it to. So
I was just curious straight off what you thought of it.
so I so
Oh no.
no, no, I hesitate only because I I always try to be very conscientious about the way I talk about music, and that makes it sound like I'm going to say bad things. I liked the album. I'll spoil you there. I liked the album, and I've only grown to like it more as I've listened to
No
it more.
suspense. Yeah.
But there are a variety of things when it comes to music, when it comes to again art consumption in general, that people when they talk about art will take as givens or take for granted or take as like rules that I always try to be very conscientious about because at the end of the day, I think art is very subjective and you can perhaps talk objectively about technique or craft or other things in certain ways, but at the end of the day, like sometimes you like something and you can't explain it, or if you did explain it, it wouldn't necessarily mean that someone else would like it because of those same reasons. um all that to say, like anything I say here, I always try to be like I have friends who are super into like really complex music like progressive rock or like contemporary classical, that sort of stuff, and I have friends whose musical tastes are, and I mean this in the like the most literal way possible. They are more basic and not in a negative like memey basic kind of way, but like it's more like, oh, they like stuff that they hear on the radio. They don't put deep thought into the stuff that they're consuming, and both of those extremes are fine. And there's a whole spectrum of stuff beyond that. Um, but at the end of the day, again, because I feel like the way that people respond to art is so subjective, I very rarely will say like, oh, that's a good song definitively or objectively, or if I do say that, it's more of like an enthusiastic way, oh, like, oh, that's such a good song, not in a sense of like, oh, I think that that song should be at the top of the Billboard charts or something, because as you can see, a lot of the stuff that you're really into is not necessarily the stuff that sells the best. Like again, Dog Days Are Over was probably one of her biggest songs, and it doesn't do much for me. That doesn't mean it's a bad song or a good song. It just means it will work for certain people in certain ways, and it won't work for people in other ways. Um,
Well, not to bring up the dread specter of Hosier, but
yeah.
like Too Sweet being his only number one.
Mm-hmm.
It was like he found that song in a drawer and it wasn't even that important. And it's that one.
Yeah.
That's the one. Not even Take Me to Church,
Mm-hmm.
mind you. It's that one.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was as baffled by that as anybody.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it was like me and my Britney playlist.
Yeah.
Like, yes, one song is basically repeating Womanizer over and over again. That is what I wanted when I was
Yeah.
in terrible pain.
And
that is what I wanted.
I guess I always want to preface my comments with stuff like this because, yes, I'm a musician. Yes, I studied music, and I can speak from a place. I guess I can speak from a place of authority in certain ways, but I never want to come off as like the be all end all authority. Like at the end of the day, like I always bring up the fact that like David Gilmour didn't know how to read sheet music until he was in his 60s and he wanted to learn saxophone for one of his solo albums. He's still one of the best guitarists of all time. So, like, knowledge and ability aren't always connected the ways that people think they are. And just because I know a bunch about music theory and can wax for 30 minutes about how True from Silent Hill 2 is such a like perfectly crafted piece of music, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make someone else think like, oh, this should be getting all the awards or something. I'm looking at you, video game awards.
I'm not even looking for
Yeah.
Was it good, was it bad? There are probably two primary ways to listen to an album, and I'm a terrible person. One of them is to listen to the album as a whole, as a narrative, as all the songs are connected. What journey is it taking you on? When there's a new album, yeah, I'll listen to the whole thing to get the lay of the land. What's the story of it? Being very neurodivergent, I like to listen to a song on repeat and chew all the dopamine out of it, either hours, days, doesn't matter. I will get stuck on one song. And so if an album has three songs for me to be obsessed with, that's a pretty good hit rate. So I don't even necessarily go, was this album good or bad?
Mm-hmm.
And I think on this one, which is a really cohesive album, I think, because it's about a specific event in her life in some ways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 songs I absolutely loved. So I'm like, okay, this is probably one of my favorite albums of hers in terms of it's a collective of songs that go on a playlist, my favorites for me to pick out. And it's partly an emotional regulation thing.
Yeah.
When I get really overwhelmed by something, it's like I pick one song, it's there, it's consistent. I know I listen to a lot of music when I went to conventions because you get overwhelmed. Everyone. Neurotypical doesn't matter. You will get so overwhelmed. And at the same time, when you listen to something over and over, you start hearing different layers of it at different times. So that's actually, to me, that can be a really cool way to engage with music. Sometimes you really do kind of have to listen to the whole album. So I was curious as to like which songs specifically hit you the most, maybe?
Yeah, so I'm very much an album guy. Like I mentioned before, I was raised
a storyteller.
on progressive rock, storytelling, all that, musicals, all that sort of thing. And so if I like a few songs on an album and I listen to it once and it feels like there is that arc to it or that cohesive connective material between things, then I will listen to that whole album over and over and over again. Like Coheed and Cambria came out with a new album this year too, and I loved it. And so half of the stuff that was at the top of my Spotify Wrapped was just that album because there were like specific songs that I really liked, but I also enjoyed the arc of the whole album as a whole. And so I would listen, if I wanted to listen to one song, I would often listen to the whole album so I could both listen to that song I wanted to hear, but also hear the rest of the songs because I enjoyed it as a full experience. And I'm trying to find other places to listen to stuff than Spotify. So like my own music is on Spotify, but it is like getting more and more of a problem. But that again,
Like
we don't have to
Spotify
dive
is
too
the
deep into it.
devil,
Yeah.
but I'm on Apple Music, so I am not without sin. Like I understand there is
Yeah.
kind of no good platform, but it's a little better than Spotify,
Yeah,
maybe.
and it's one of those things where like my band and I are probably gonna have to face this decision. Like, do we put our album up on Spotify because artists aren't getting like any money from Spotify, but it is the way that so many people consume music nowadays. So
Yeah, like
it's a complicated discussion.
yeah. And I don't use Spotify just because I'm such an iTunes diehard
Oh
that when
yeah.
they just shifted it to Apple Music, I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, sure.
I
Okay.
I still have an iPod Touch that has not crapped out on me yet, and
Oh,
so I'm just
wow.
gonna run because I also was an iTunes person. Again, podcasting, like that's where it started. Um, but I feel like I've been avoiding the question that you actually asked me, which I haven't consciously been trying to. I just keep going on tangents because again, neurodivergent. But I love the album. The songs that it was interesting to hear what songs that like you really connected with or ended up being your favorites because the ones that like jumped out at me even on like just the first few listens that I've had of it were like one of the greats and then
Yeah.
I think like stuff like I think music by men because again it like those were the songs where it was just I'm trying to figure out the best way to talk about this. Like, not only are they very raw and vulnerable and very personal, but as someone who makes music and it, like again, I'm not like I am not on the level even close to the level of like having that sort of success, but it's an industry that I'm very invested in and very fascinated by. I kind of wrote a musical about it. And so I'm always really interested to hear people's different perspectives on it. Like today, the day that we're recording this is actually like the 50th anniversary of the release of "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd, and
Oh, wow.
that was an album about the industry in a lot of ways. It was like Dark Side of the Moon came out, and uh, like they shot to the top of the charts. They had their first big successful single in the U.S. Money, and they went on tour across Europe and the United States. Pink Floyd's my favorite band, so I could go on them about them forever. But this is relevant. But after they finished that tour up and they were starting to work on the next album, so much of the music became about how like disaffected they were and disenfranchised they were with the music industry. That whole album, like everything from "Shine on You Crazy Diamond," which is this exploration of Sid Barrett's relationship with the band and how he was kind of like they're how they have gone on without him, but how his specter was still there literally in certain ways because there's a famous story about him walking into the studio during the recording sessions and them not recognizing him, but also stuff like
Mm.
welcome to the Machine about like written from the perspective of like some industry executive being like, hey, welcome to the Machine, we're just gonna churn you out and like squeeze you for all that you're squeeze you until you're dry or have a cigar, which they even had someone else sing the song partly because neither David Gilmour nor Roger Waters were feeling up for singing it, but also it kind of adds a second layer to the music where they have someone else singing the song, so it's like a character talking to the band about the band. By the way, which one's Pink? Um, and I keep,
Which one of you is Floyd? Which one's
yeah.
Pink?
And I keep like tangenting away from the actual subject matter, but I feel like it's all relevant. One of the greats in music by men is Florence talking about her own experiences in the music industry and like, what's that line? Like in one of the greats that was it's so cutting where
You're my second favorite frontman.
yeah, you're my second favorite frontman. That whole bridge section is so good and it's so like uh I had a professor in college who taught nonfiction. He would talk about stuff being emotionally hot, which was kind of a weird phrase for the way to talk about it, but he didn't mean anything by it. It was just like the best way he could verbalize it. Um, but yeah, there's so much in that bridge. I watched a video of her performing it in a studio, and it's just her and the guitarist, and It's so powerful just because she puts
Well,
everything into her performance.
I'll tell you what I heard about this was that she came into the studio to record it. It was a poem she had written,
Yeah.
and she just sang it off the paper.
Hmm.
And that's the take they used. It
Yeah.
was all in one take, and she just sang it. And so the video she put out for it was supposed to be kind of a Bob Dylan kind of pose, her in the back of
Hmm.
a car with a cigarette, very disaffected, sunglasses on, kind of singing the
Yeah.
song in a very, calm kind of way, but you could it, it bites. It
Hmm.
does. And I love that section.
Yeah. The
No,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say no small reason because I've pulled up the lyrics and I'm trying to find
Yeah. The line that
the
jumped out
part.
to me the first time I listened to was it must be nice to be a man and make boring music just because you can. And it's such an interesting thing to experience as a man who makes music. But it's a sort of thing where like this is where we get into the whole thing like oh, people who are critical of not all men. It's like I don't think she's talking about me when she says that lyric. She
I
might
was going
be.
to say
Yeah, or
there's something to be said about
yeah.
intersectionality where it's like these are men who could exclude you as well.
Yeah,
Like I
exactly.
really think she's talking about the industry and
Yeah, and it's
even
also like I
patriarchy.
I have enough like not just self-respect, but also I'm worldly enough to know that like I don't hear, and I'm also not so sensitive that I hear a line like that. I'm like, oh, is she fucking talking about me? It's like, no, she's talking about a very real thing that has happened in the music industry where like it is male dominated. It's been for forever, and we like to think it changes. And there are even times where it feels like it is changing, but it's a male dominated industry, like so many different art industries, and a lot of the men in power are not great people and then when it comes to the people making music, yeah, it's so much easier for men to get by in so many different art industries because we live in a male dominated world. And that like I never want to just sound like I'm churning out familiar phrases when you talk about this stuff, but if there are cliches, it's because like they are they're not wrong a lot of times.
Well, and it's like also one of the reasons once you suggested, like, let me make this clear.
Mhm.
I love Florence, and I did not suggest this as the episode
No,
topic.
no, I was
Ian
the one who was
suggested
like,
this.
I want to talk about this.
I didn't inflict this on you. The album is in some ways about being a performer. So, I
Hmm.
mean, you don't have to apologize for like, I think of myself as such a hot. No, I wanted to talk to you as a musician, you
Hmm.
as a musician, about this. And what's interesting, I looked up the lyrics to Music by Men because I
Oh
was
yeah.
expecting it to elaborate on how she goes in on. And that's the thing. Like, I don't
Hmm.
think you are in a position where you can afford to make boring music.
Yeah.
You're not a millionaire, disaffected,
Yeah.
30-year veteran of,
Hmm.
whichever band. You're not the kind of person who can afford to. You don't want to, but you also
Yeah.
don't have those laurels to rest on. So, see, there's a lot of people she's not talking about,
Yeah.
men or not. But what's interesting is I assumed Music by Men, when I first saw the title, would be a continuation of that. And I
Yeah.
really don't think it is. She
No, it's
goes
not.
in on herself about her failings or the failings of the person she's speaking as, I don't know,
Mm.
couples therapy, and
Mm.
this distance between her and this male partner. And she gets towards the end and says, listening to a song by the 1975, I thought, fuck it, I might as well give Music by Men a try.
Hmm.
And it kind of sounds like she's kind of going back to, I am going to hear that side. I am going to,
Hmm.
it's Music by Men isn't just the arrogant second favorite frontman.
Yeah.
It's there is more than that. So I liked how that was completely not where I expected her to go with that.
Mm.
And so there is a little bit of reconciliation there,
Hmm.
and then let there be love, let there be light. So
Yeah.
it is positive after that. The one I find really really interesting is Everybody Scream.
Yeah.
And that is a banger. I mean, number one, it's a
Mm.
great song. Do you know the story of what it's about?
I think I might have read a little bit about it, but refresh my memory.
Okay, for everyone else who isn't aware of this, she's been very open in interviews about this album that it is in part about the ectopic miscarriage she had.
Mm.
And when she says something about, blood on the stage, I thought she was referring to the time she broke her foot on stage,
Mm.
jumping off a piece of staging and fell, broke her foot, bled all over the place, and finished the show.
Yeah.
And then, and I was like, okay, so she loves performing. She's really dedicated to it. She paid for that in blood. And then
Mm.
I read that it was actually a miscarriage she
Mm.
had on stage. And, like, as a reminder, a miscarriage isn't necessarily a thing that happens in a single second. And I
Mm.
should basically put in a content trigger warning for this.
Yeah.
But this is kind of what the album is about, and I'll be as discreet about it as I can. But she said this was the first time she and her partner had actually tried to have kids. And so the interview I read, she was saying she thought of it as more like the first one kind of didn't take, and that's okay, and that's part of the process. And so in the days when they were kind of seeing how this was going to work out, she was suddenly in a lot of pain. And she was like, no, no, the show is going to go on. It's fine. Blood, no, it's fine. I'm going to go on.
Mm.
And afterwards, she did the entire show. She said she stepped out on stage and all the pain went away. And so this was this like sacred place that was, just everything in that moment. And then afterwards, people were like, you need to go get a scan. You need to go right now. It was an ectopic pregnancy, and if you're familiar with what that is, a relative of mine, a very close relative of mine, had one.
Oh, wow.
And it's when the egg doesn't implant, it's not viable. And so when we've had all of these post Roe v. Wade conversations
Mm.
about legislators not understanding how pregnancy works, it's just not viable. There's nothing you can do about it. And like my relative, she lost a fallopian tube
Mm.
and nearly died, as my relative nearly died. Lost 50%, my relative lost 50% of her blood.
Jeez.
And yeah, it was rough. The pain involved both before and after was absolutely incredible. Just physical pain was
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. It was awful. So I have kind of a secondhand view of what Florence must have been going through
Wow.
here. And she said in a similar way, she lost a lot of blood. And it reminds me in some ways of the Tori Amos song Spark, which is also about a miscarriage. And it's about the word spark is both the spark of life, that the second spark within her that she then lost, but also finding that will to live afterwards, her own
Mm.
spark, and deciding she does want to keep going. And I mean, it's my favorite song of hers because in some way it also is kind of a banger. It is. But it's interesting that in sort of a genre of singer-songwriters talking about moving on after their own pain,
Mm.
after a dark place, there's like a specific subgenre of women who have had miscarriages
Oh, wow.
who then
Yeah.
write about it and express it in music. And Everybody's Scream is very much, I've gone through all of this, but I can't leave performing.
Yeah.
I love it, and your love for me is keeping me going. And in some ways, it's about, I think you can extrapolate, it is
Mm.
about performing, but it's also just about living
Yeah.
and continuing on. So it's this amazing song, and it goes so hard. It's
It
so
really
good.
does. Like, it is. It. First of all, holy shit, that's a lot. But also,
Yeah.
yeah, like this is part of why, like, yeah, even just on my first listen, listening to that first song, yeah, and hearing all that stuff that was clearly about performing, and there is a genre of song there too of like, uh, that kind of love-hate relationship sometimes with performing, or maybe not love-hate relationship, but that feeling of like, oh, this can be this can be very difficult sometimes, even self-destructive in certain ways, but I still want it, or I still need it in some way, or there's still something to be there. There are a lot of songs about people's relationship with performing, but then having that
Yeah.
all those other layers to it. Because I had also read about the thing about her breaking her foot and stuff, and like the
Hmm.
genius.com. Genius.com, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a website that has like is specifically for displaying lyrics with either other people's interpretations or like sometimes even interpretations from the songwriter themselves that you can kind of reference alongside, excuse me, alongside the lyrics. And
Yeah.
they have a link to a tweet of hers where she said, "I'm so sorry to say that after an X-ray, it seems I was dancing on a broken foot last night."
Yeah.
But yeah, it is wild. Um,
I'm trying to find it on Genius because she said something about fame, and I
mhm.
hate that I can't remember. It wasn't necessarily like the embarrassments of fame. It was something where it's like it's tough, and she
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily enjoy that part, but the performing is what she finds herself
mhm.
coming back to over and over. And she'd had a previous song, I think it was King, where it was sort of about trying to decide, did she want to start a family or did she want to keep her career? And was that
Yeah,
something she had to choose between? And then she was like, well, that line sure was prophetic because here I am
yeah.
in the Everybody Scream era, and wow, you know.
Hmm.
And I will say, my relative who lost a fallopian tube went on to have a healthy child. I
Oh,
mean,
that's
it's
great.
not, yeah, it's not just the end of
Hmm.
everything, but it can kill you. It's
Yeah.
very, very dangerous. And she didn't realize it was ectopic.
Hmm.
And so I think at the time she knew she was pregnant. She may have known it wasn't going to take, if you will. And she had
Hmm.
accepted that, she says. She was kind of at peace with that, and it's part of the process. And then,
Yeah,
and and I didn't know that the first 500 times I listened to the song.
yeah. And
I didn't even know that.
this is the other thing that's fascinating about music is like art in general again, but music in particular, is that you can have a deep connection to something, and that may not have even been what the artist intended, but like most of the like best artists, I feel like will allow for that alternative interpretation, or like for people to will or understand that that's part of making art, is people bringing their own baggage to whatever you've made, and connecting in different ways that you couldn't have thought of. Like the story that I always like to tell is how Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam has talked about how the song "Alive," the audience actually
Yeah.
changed the meaning of that song for him. Where initially he wrote it from this place of bitterness, like, "Oh, this is something that's awful, and I'm still alive, and I have to live with it," and it was
Hmm.
actually the audience taking it as this thing of like, no, I've been through all this stuff and I've survived it. I'm still alive. That changed the meaning of the song for him, which is
Sort of an anthem of survival to
yeah,
them.
and
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful way. And those are, I think, my favorite artists are the people who like they have that vision and they have that craft, like Florence here. And I'll get more into that in a moment. But they have that vision and craft, but they also have that humility to understand like art can be whatever a person wants it to be for the artist and for the audience. And like the best works of art are those ones that have that sense of like, I think back in college they talked about it like reciprocity, that place where like the artist comes halfway and the audience comes halfway, and the thing that they make together is the actual piece of art.
And then we saw that clip of her on Seth Meyers
Yeah.
where there is a song of hers on the previous album called Daffodil.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is just her saying daffodil over and over in an ominous tone.
Hmm.
And she's like, yeah, it's just a word. I don't know that it really means anything. So she's on Seth Meyers and
Yeah.
she's like, you know, people ask me what it's about and I have them tell me and I go, "Oh yes, you're correct. That is what
Hmm.
it's about. I may steal that to tell other people that's what
Yeah.
it's about."
And
And then she also fessed up to using RhymeZone.
yes, that was so validating because I like
Oh, so good.
like the more she talked, the more I was like, no, I'm right here with you. And then Seth brings up RhymeZone and she's like, yeah, RhymeZone. And I'm like, oh shit, I use RhymeZone. And I'm like, okay, I can never feel bad for using RhymeZone again because Florence from Florence and the Machine uses it.
Florence Welch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, it's another reason that like I kind of fell in love with her as an artist because I always when it comes to artists like there's the whole thing of separation of art and artist, and I do genuinely believe that you shouldn't have to know a ton about an artist in order to be able to appreciate their work, but I always appreciate doing that deeper dive, call it a neurodivergent idiosyncrasy, but I I don't see it as a requirement for engaging with art, but I think it can enhance a work of art. Like it really enhances my enjoyment of Alive by Pearl Jam to know that story that Eddie Vedder has for it. But I don't need to know that story to enjoy it, and it shouldn't be a requirement for people to enjoy it. Um, that said, I love learning, like some of my favorite artists, I love learning about them and seeing that humility there and having that groundedness to them. One of my favorite stories from college was going to a faculty reading for one of my writing professors, a poetry professor. And she kind of had this reputation for being very like ethereal and floaty. She was the poetry professor, and so she kind of had that vibe. But she did this chapbook of poetry where she wrote a bunch of poems and then included with the poetry book a a an insert that had like little boxes cut out of it that you could put on any of the pages, and it would turn each poem into a piece of erasure poetry, which is a really cool concept and a really
Yeah.
interesting way because it introduces some interesting limitations like, oh, I can't just write this poem. I've also got to think about where this word is falling on the page so that it falls into the windows of that little insert. But my favorite part of that reading was she was explaining this concept before reading any of the poems. And then she goes, so I thought about this and I was like, well, Carla, is this really artistic or is this just a load of bullshit? And everyone bursts out laughing. And she goes on to say about like, no, I ended up coming to the conclusion, no, like I think this is a worthy way of approaching the medium. But I appreciate that she had that groundedness to think like, is this really cool or am I just being really pretentious? Because like with art, that there's always that risk there, and it's something that I try to avoid a lot in the stuff that I write. And also, again, the way that I talk about art is like I have a lot of different perspectives on art, but I should never be considered the be all end all authority. What works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. Um, okay,
I
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Mostly I think I said this to you earlier.
Yeah.
If I'm listening to a band, a singer, musician, I'm like, I don't care if this was about your breakup with celebrity
Mm,
XYZ. That doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care. What does this song mean to me? But sometimes you get to a song like this is about Florence and her performing career.
yeah.
And I'm like, I need to know more about this because I clearly am not going to relate directly to this.
Hmm.
I want to know what the story is.
Yeah.
Whereas music by men, I understand that perfectly, even though it kind of refers back to one of the greats.
Hmm.
And I don't know a specific backstory behind one of the greats. I don't, it
Yeah.
feels like she's shading somebody
Oh
specific, but
yeah.
I don't know who it
Probably.
is. And I don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to know who it is. She's clearly been mistreated by somebody,
Mm.
and that's fine. I ended up looking up what Kraken was about.
Oh yeah.
And at first I kind of thought it had this, maybe an adolescent girl sitting in front of the TV and being a huge fangirl of like that kind of Beatlemania kind of idea.
Hmm.
Someone's so hot, she sticks her fist in her mouth to just control herself. And
Hmm.
she mentions, being another, you think I'm just another drunken groupie. And I was like, okay, is this, she'd also said she thought about like primal scream therapy and why would people be screaming for different reasons. So that also made
Mm.
me think of Beatlemania. And so I happened to read up what it was about this morning. And she said it was partly about how she started off in the indie music scene getting treated like she was just another drunken groupie and people not realizing she was a musician there to perform.
Mm-hmm.
And, then becoming this larger than life presence as she became famous. And I went, that does make more sense in that I don't know what a teenage girl is going to grow into. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
competition in the music industry, okay, that does make more sense to me. So while that was an interesting thought I had, the song is more cohesive if I find out what she's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clearly not something, because we are talking about like the music scene, it is clearly something I'm not going to relate to myself necessarily. But there are other songs I had no trouble
Yeah.
relating to. But Everybody Scream was like, and I happened to see the thing about the miscarriage. It was on the Apple Music notes, I
Yeah.
think, at
I
the
think I,
top of
I know
the,
that I saw it somewhere, but I can't remember where.
like, I wasn't looking, but I went, oh, it might have been on Tumblr as well. I
Mm.
was like, oh my, and so that then changes the entire perception of the album when you're like, okay, even if the song here and there isn't about that, this entire album is in the wake of that
Yeah.
loss and that grief. And, even the more life affirming songs take place after that grief. And
Mm.
so, okay, that's really her previous album was written during lockdown during the pandemic. And the big song was My Love. And the song was the lyrics were, I don't know where to put my love. It wasn't her
Oh.
calling a person my love. It was her saying, I can't perform. I can't write. I'm
Oh.
stuck, locked down. I don't know where to put all of this energy that I have. I don't know what to do with it. And so, but you wouldn't think that
Yeah.
just from the title.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you get to it, I don't know where to put my love. It could be, I'm a person looking for love and I want to give it and I have no one to give it to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also an interpretation that
Yeah.
works for like me as a non-performer. That completely
Yeah.
works as well. So, but then you realize, okay, here's the backstory of how that album, worked. And I don't know if it was recorded like a lot of people had to record different tracks separately, and musicians in different places
Yeah. It.
couldn't meet up. And
I probably should have looked a little bit more into that, but it is when you reach that level, it's not uncommon to record in a variety of different ways and then throw it at the
yeah,
producer and just be like, "Hey, make it work." That's a very
figure
glib
it
way to
out.
put it, but it is like it is common to see like, oh, these tracks were produced by so and so, or these tracks were produced by so and so, rather than it all being one person or one place. Um, just because scheduling sometimes it's working with a different producer for a different sound or whatever. Um,
What was the Yeah, and so like the first three albums, certainly I don't know anything about the circumstances. They're just a wonderful banquet of songs for me to
mhm.
just mix and match. I don't know, I just got here. That kind of idea. But this one is just so interesting to me. And I will
Yeah,
say my favorite song of hers total is Howl, and it's off the first album.
yeah,
And I've written about it before, but it is very much like a werewolf
yeah,
story, like a very archetypal, like talking about the legend of the werewolf. And be careful, love can turn you into a beast, and that
hmm,
kind of idea. So it doesn't necessarily, it could be about something in her own life, but it doesn't sound like that just at face value.
yeah.
Whereas some of these you're like, okay, you're writing about something
Oh yeah,
very personal. Which song is it? I think it's You Can Have It All, which I've seen a lot of people on Tumblr really
yeah.
vibe with that song. And it
It's a
starts off with,
huge song, like sound wise. It's so
yeah, just her
epic.
belting out You Can Have It All. But it starts off with, I sit in the salt water, call in a vision of my daughter. And if you know she's had a miscarriage, you're
Yeah,
like, oh my God, that's so
yeah,
heavy. Light a candle, place my grief upon the altar.
yeah,
Am I a woman now? I mean, you're just like, oh my God, to be belting out, you can have it all. After that, it's like, wow, okay,
yeah.
that's so much. That is so much.
And that's the other thing that, like, I it's one thing to enjoy and appreciate art or music or whatever, but like to also like the it's stuff like that that makes me respect her so much. Not that I didn't respect her before, but like as an artist, it's something that I kind of going back to the nonfiction stuff I was talking about before. Like I had a great nonfiction professor back in college who talked about writing nonfiction like trying to trying to sail a boat between two cliff sides. One of the cliff sides is self-deprecation and the other cliff side is self-aggrandizing, and you're trying to navigate this narrow channel between the two where you're telling an authentic story but you're not straying too far into either of those extremes. And it was kind of just a metaphor to talk about craft, is particularly when writing nonfiction, where you're writing about stuff from your own life potentially, and you want to be authentic about it, but you're also like at the end of the day you're telling a story. You're not just giving someone your diary and saying like, "Hey, look at this and tell me it's literature" or something. Um, that might be getting a little too into the weeds with writing and literature and stuff. But the point that I'm trying to make is the level of craft that she shows in this songwriting, where she's taking some very personal experiences and turning it into something that, like, again, that like I don't want this to come off too writerly. I guess I never want it to come off as, like, pretentious or like, oh, there's only one way to think about making art. But there is this thing with writing nonfiction in particular, I think, where you're still, if you are writing something to be published or released, you do have to consider the audience to a certain extent. You do have to think about, okay, how do I craft this into something that is like something that someone else can experience and connect with. And that is where craft comes in a lot of the time. It isn't necessarily just about being as personal as possible or as authentic as possible. It's also crafting it in a way where you're bridging that gap between the other and yourself. I'm getting so in the weeds now, but does any of the stuff I'm saying make sense? I think she's
Yeah, no.
really good at doing that. She has all of this poetry. Like she could have just started this verse off saying like, I sit in a bath and I think about the daughter that I lost. But saying I sit in the salt water and call in a vision of my daughter, it isn't just the fact that it rhymes. It's so poetic and it's so much more
Yeah.
evocative than if she just said it the way that I just said it.
It's not just that she got on RhymeZone, it's
Yeah,
what she did with what she got there.
exactly.
Um, I think, and what's interesting about the song Everybody Scream is that when you listen to the lyrics, it would be difficult for a non-musician to necessarily relate to the words of it,
Mhm.
but the musicality of it,
Yeah.
it's such a banger, you don't even care. Like that's how she
Mhm.
bridges that. And I heard it the first time and I thought, I will bet you $5, whoever I'm betting with, she will open her next concert tour with this song.
Oh yeah.
And she will have these fans who are so hyped to see her again. And she will say, everybody scream. And she will have an entire
Yeah.
auditorium screaming back at her. And the
Absolutely.
energy will be incredible. And
Mhm.
that's also what she wants it to be.
Yeah.
And she, in this interview I read, she said her sister kind of said, oh, so you feel most comfortable when all the attention is on you. And I mean, it's a good relationship. She was like,
Yeah.
it's great to have little sisters who call you on your shit sometimes. But it is kind of a celebration of that. And
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about being writerly. I'm not necessarily a musician or a performer, but I actually related to this song in kind of an oblique way, in that I think I talked about this on the previous episode, not this one. I kind of went away for a few years.
Mm.
Some things kind of happened. I either lurked on the internet or just didn't say anything, didn't write. I went through a really tough time in my life. In some ways, I mean, I think Florence would really dig the idea that I was screaming in horrible pain and coping with it by listening to her music.
Mm.
she's in horrible pain and she's coping with it by making that music. Like I think on some level that's a very Florence and the Machine
Yeah.
experience. But also I wanted to come back at some
Mm-hmm.
point and I didn't want to give up writing for other people to read. I wrote for myself the entire
Mm-hmm.
time I was, missing. I wrote for my own enjoyment just to keep that alive. I had thought about how I was 9 years old and we just sit on a Saturday and just write all day long with my favorite purple pen. And I would write my little stories and just the childlike pleasure of no one's going to read this but me, but I love the act of writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she is talking about the energy she gets from the people who scream for her. And I certainly don't have people screaming for me. It's not that. But it's like this song that kind of makes you feel powerful when you're like, a creator isn't necessarily a performer, but if you make your work public, you are creating on a stage
Yeah.
the way she's performing on a stage.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of has this powerful kind of, I'm going to get out here on this stage because that's really, I get something out of that. I don't want to leave it behind. I have that will to live and I have that will to engage with that energy and try to keep going. And so, even though it is kind of about musical performing, and that isn't something I can specifically relate to, that it did kind of hit for me, but
Yeah.
also the musicality of it
Yeah.
would hit for anybody. It's just, and the video is so great.
Mm-hmm.
Just,
Yeah.
I will say, I did kind of worry about, her overpowering these men in this
Mm-hmm.
video and like vomiting flowers at them. And I was like, okay. She mostly like wrote and produced this album with Mark Bowen, who is the guitarist for the band Idols, a post-punk band. So she has a post-punk guitarist in here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he collaborated with her on like every single song. And I think this particular song and Buckle,
Mm-hmm.
she co-wrote with Mitski, and who was somebody I kind of had heard of. And so this got me into listening to Mitski this week. And I was like, well, this is the gift that keeps on giving. Now I've got even more music to listen to. This is wonderful. So, but, and I can hear some Mitski in this song. I can hear Mark Bowen in the thumping musicality of it. I'm not familiar with his band necessarily, but I could hear what his contribution must have been. And I can hear some of the Mitski lyricism, and it's also Florence's because she has, she recorded 4 of the songs from the last album as poems. She read them as poems, so that's on one of the editions. But I can hear kind of some Mitski influence in there as well. And I'm sitting here on Genius trying to look up these lyrics so I can quote them correctly, and I am seeing that she did a cover of Tori Amos's Cornflake Girl,
Oh wow.
which is, I'm sitting here going, I have to get hold of this now. In terms of lyricists who, you need the musicality because the lyrics make no fucking sense and you have no idea. You have to go look it up on Genius because what the fuck are they talking about? Cornflake Girl is probably one of Tori's biggest what the fuck songs because you're like, who is the man with the golden gun? I have no idea what's happening here. Someone's a raisin girl, someone's cornflake girl. I don't know what's happening. And there is a story behind it, and you can go find it if you want. But I'm going, oh, Florence singing that. That's going to be crazy. I got to go find that. If you want other recommendations, she did a song for the Disney Cruella
Oh
movie,
geez.
Call Me Cruella. Listen, I wish Cruella DeVille was not in the song, those words, because it is such a good song. And like, there's one moment where she's screaming something about being out of her mind. That's just, you just want to howl it out the window. It's
Yeah.
so good. And then it's about Cruella DeVille. And you're like, I can't be belting this character's name out and look myself in the face in the mirror. I can't
Yeah.
do this. What are you doing? But it's so good.
It's
So she's done some one-off songs like that.
yeah. I have so many different things I want to talk about. First of all, you talking about how you connected with Everybody Streams was beautiful. That was awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
Also, like the musicality of the song. Yeah, that is one of the things that I think I I personally really respond to in music, and also is part of the reason that I write music is because there is this way that music can tell a story without words. Even when you have lyrics, the music behind it can completely transform the meaning of a piece of music. Or you can have an instrumental piece of music that you feel like you know what it's about because of the notes that the composer chose or something like that. Um, People will have that debate sometimes, or will say like, "Oh, I don't really need the music to be good. I'm a lyrics person," or "Oh, I don't really listen too closely to the lyrics. I'm more of a music person." I always want both. I'm someone who's like I can enjoy the stuff if I don't have both, but the stuff that I really love is the stuff that stimulates me on both the music side and the lyrical side, because I want the whole package, and that is something that I think Florence has. She's got she's got the musicality, and like with a song like Everybody Scream in particular, it's written in this way that it has this momentum to it. Like it's got this three beat feel to it that I always feel like songs that are written in three beat are always going to sound heavier. Like there are tons of metal songs that are written in a three beat time signature that sound so much heavier because they have that three beat feel. There's also that connection to like again going back to like traditional folk music and stuff. Some of the most famous Irish melodies are in that three beat feel, and like I'm sure that she's got that connection to that music being from the British Isles. Um, and yeah, like the production, it that's a that is one of the things I was going to bring up is like I think initially what can turn me off to certain artists is the way that the music is produced, and I'm very much like I want to be able to hear every single instrument, whereas I think Florence's music, like the main songs on the album, or the albums themselves, not the different alternate versions, they're produced in a way where it is more of like the whole experience rather than, oh, here's like this specific player is doing this specific thing and that specific thing, which is a completely valid way to produce. I'm not criticizing, it's just not my favorite thing. But then like again, listening to the chamber versions of these songs where it does feel like she's more a part of the music, and you can hear every instrument, every single thing that every instrument is doing. It is both more exposed in a lot of ways, and it also, to me, feel again, it's kind of that full whole package thing where I'm like, oh, I feel like this isn't just about her voice or the lyrics or this specific instrument or anything. It's all of that, the sum of all of those parts, um, and I love that. Uh,
I will say about musicality, I want the whole package. I
yeah.
want the whole package. Musicality is, just to use this word I'm throwing in there for whatever nonsensical reason, it's it is what gets me.
Mm-hmm.
It is, sometimes I'll have been really neurodivergent and listened to the song 50 times in a row, and I'm like, I should really look up what these words are. I would like to sing along with it. I should really look up what they are. And then I go, oh no, I didn't know that's what that was about. Oh, oh no, that's
The
terrible.
number of times that's happened to me, specifically with like indie artists.
Okay, again, not to bring up the Dread Spectre of Hosier, but he has a song called Cherry Wine, and it's
Mhm.
really pretty. The man has never enunciated once in his life. Enunciation, not even once. And so I'm like, this is really pretty. Okay, I'm really
Mhm.
vibing with this. A couple of times into it, I went and looked up the lyrics. It's about domestic abuse. It's
Oh man.
famously about domestic abuse. I think he may have even, it may have benefited a charity, I think.
Oh yeah.
Like, I was like, oh my God, that's,
Or
oh
another one of his
no.
songs. I love the song Like Real People Do. And you look up that song and it's like, oh, I was thinking about bogmen coming out of the bogs of Irish marshes, and like the whole
Yes.
song being about like, hey, forget about where we might have been before. Let's just like make out, and we aren't going to think too complexly about it, which can be nice in the moment but isn't necessarily the foundation for a healthy relationship. No, forget about my past being a like dead thing in a bog.
Let's be bog monsters together. That
Yeah.
was his Seamus Haney bog era.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I, and see, so many fans get tattoos from
Mm,
that song, and it's like, do you know what it's about? Are you sure? Like, I think at least one couple has had a proposal in his audience
Mm.
during that song. And someone's phone camera cuts to him and he's like, ah, okay,
Yeah.
great, great.
Yeah.
It's, I never get over just how people refuse to notice what that song is
What
about.
was that? Was that part of a Tumblr post? I feel like there was a Tumblr post that went around that was kind of along those lines, and it
Probably.
also included that
From me,
instance.
probably.
It included someone at their wedding had a line on like a line from literature on their like their napkins or something, or like their party favors or whatever, and it was a line from Lolita.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And it's like out of
That's,
context. Oh,
yeah. Oh, no. I really like that book, but I read it when I was 16.
mm,
So I was maybe a year off Dolores's age. And I really assumed Dolores had a lot more agency than she did.
uh,
I'm not saying I thought she was into it or I thought she asked for it. I'm not saying that at all. But I did think she had a lot more agency as a teenage girl, especially when you find out later in the book that someone else kind of got to her before Humbert did.
mm,
I really, I kind of bought into her own view of herself that she
mm,
had more control than she did, kind of at some points. And I reread it as an adult and wanted to kick his ass.
mm,
Like, it's real different. And that's even somebody who understood the book.
mm,
If you don't even understand that, like, light of my life, fire of my loins, or whatever,
mm.
isn't a good thing. Oh boy, that's rough. But I loved it for how beautiful the language was. And
Yeah,
again, I was 16.
yeah,
There's a lot of things I didn't understand as a teenager.
yeah,
But but people just woof,
yeah,
woof. Yeah.
yeah.
It's rough.
It is interesting sometimes the way people will. Yeah, and this kind of goes back to the whole thing of interpretation. It's like you shouldn't have to know the story behind a piece of art to really completely get it. But there are potentially some gross misinterpretations that people should be conscientious of.
You should at least engage with it enough that you do have a good faith interpretation
Yeah.
of what it's about that takes the whole thing into
Mm,
account. Maybe. That's just me. I don't know. But I was trying to think. Yeah, and the thing is talking about things growing on you. I listened to Howl about 7 times, going through the
mm,
songs on that album and was like, yeah, okay, this is pretty good. And it didn't click for me until somewhere down the line. And now it's like one of my top 3 songs of all time.
wow.
Love it so much. Trying to think. Her Florence's tour is starting up. I want to find some kind of video somebody gets concert footage
Mm,
of her doing this in
yeah.
concert. Everybody scream because I
Yeah.
think she will arrange it so that she has the entire like stadium
Mm.
participating in that. I think it'll be incredible.
One last thing that I want to bring up, just because I'm gonna
Yes.
kick myself if I don't. Another
Yes.
thing that this album made me think of, especially looking at the interviews and her talking about how like she loves being on stage, but look at how much it's taking out of her. It made me immediately think of Hayley Williams with After Laughter and that album by
Yeah.
Paramore, where that was after she had. I watched a whole video where she broke down like every song on that album, and she talked about how so much of that album came from the previous tour, where she was literally dressing up as a superhero, and then they get off tour and she's super depressed, and she's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have tried to say I was a superhero. I'm a human being and I need to actually reckon with everything that's going on in my life and how much this is actually taking out of me. And
Yeah. I
so
mean,
I
it's a
saw a
great
lot
way
of
to pump
parallels
yourself
there.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But
yeah.
what happens when Florence does have a very big persona on stage. I really
Yeah.
think she's kind of like the Stevie Nicks of the 21st century.
Yeah.
And she's actually said she's very inspired by Stevie Nicks. She
Yeah.
gets these, flowy, transparent gowns. I think Gucci was dressing her at one point
Hmm.
and has this very big presence. But then
Yeah.
you see her in real life. You saw her on Seth Meyers, and
Yeah.
she's kind of quiet and funny
Hmm.
and kind of embarrassed about something or shy. And
Hmm.
it is that sense of when you get to perform, you get to
Yeah.
expand, and it's so seductive to want to keep doing
Yeah.
that even when it takes
That
so
is
much out of you.
that is one of the things for me. Like, I don't get to play it that often, partly just because like I can't really do it solo properly, and there aren't always it doesn't always fit easily into a set list with a band. But one of my favorite songs to perform live is War Pigs by Black Sabbath, because
Oh wow.
it sits so comfortably in my range and it gives me that chance to be super dramatic. It, like, I love metal music for that reason, and I love music like Florence's for that reason, that it gives you that opportunity to be larger than life, to play a character or perform in such a way that it is, you get to put your all into it. And in some way, sometimes almost feels like you get to explore more of yourself than you can in other ways. I'm now thinking of the Frankenstein conversation and Jacob Elordi talking about how playing Frankenstein's creature, he felt like the creature was more. He was like, the creature is more me than me. I think that is one of the powerful things about this sort of music that Florence makes, and a lot of the stuff that I also enjoy performing is you get that opportunity to just wear your heart on your sleeve, no inhibitions, and express yourself truthfully and authentically. And even when you're playing a character, it's just the fact that you get to express sides of yourself that you wouldn't get to otherwise, but are there.
And it's very silly to make this comparison, but like when I do video, like
No, yeah.
game commentary, YouTube, Twitch, I am not generally the kind of person in real life who's like, get the fuck out of here. Oh, it's you. I don't get to talk like that in real life, you
Mm,
know? And so it's kind of this opportunity in some ways to be louder and bigger, and this is my little stage and you
mm,
came here to listen to me in the first place, and if you don't like it, you're free to leave. So I'm just going to be
mm.
who I am,
Yeah,
who I don't really get to be around other people
yeah.
here in the South who don't really appreciate being yelled at like they're vomit monsters. So, like in some ways, I am not a musician, I am not a performer,
Mhm,
but I think most people in some ways have to mask or perform. It might be very tiring for them.
mhm.
It might be very validating for them. And it can be a way to get through the world.
Yeah,
And
I feel
how
like,
much does it take out of you?
yeah, and I think one of the words that we're dancing around here is it can be very cathartic. Like, there's the
Yes.
catharsis in
Yes.
writing something, but there's also the catharsis in performing something. And I feel like that is probably one of the things that Florence gets out of performing. It isn't just the opportunity to perform and be larger than life, but also with some of this horrible stuff that she's had to go through, it can be very cathartic, whether it's like her ectopic pregnancy or being able to say in a song, uh, you're my second favorite front man, and have that permission to just be that real about it. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, again. Like, I'm not. You're not going to get any surprises out of me. I'm a musician, so of course I'm going to be praising the cathartic values of it, the artistic values of it. Um, yeah.
But I won't necessarily start giving recommendations because you can
Mhm.
start going through whichever albums you want to. But where is the of the songs I really really like? Drumming Song is really good
Mhm.
for me.
Mhm.
I'm just scrolling through the list.
Yeah.
Let's see. She does a really interesting cover of Addicted to Love that is very restrained
Oh.
and very tense and monotone, and kind of lets the quavers in her voice
Mm.
show that the tension is breaking, and like maybe you're a little more in love than you thought you were. And the
Mm.
music around it is very restrained, but gets to play more with the emotion
Yeah.
that she's holding back. It's
And
interesting.
that's another thing that
Uh,
takes so much vocal control. It's not just
it
about like
does.
connecting with it emotionally, it's also about having the technique to be able to connect with it emotionally and be that vulnerable and still hold on to the note and not let it just completely go off the rails. If you haven't watched The Charismatic Voice, watch her video talking about Stevie Nicks' performance of Silver Springs from the Fleetwood Mac The Dance Concert.
Oh
Because
my God.
like
I've
she
posted about that.
yeah, because she specifically, she's an opera singer, and she goes into such specific detail about how powerful Stevie Nicks' performance is, not just because of the way she's connecting with it emotionally, but because of the vocal control she has to hold on to the core of the song and not just let it devolve into a mess.
I've even posted that video before of
Yeah.
that specific.
That
Yeah,
that song, specifically that performance, is in my top 10 songs of all time. I love that
it's
performance.
it is wild. Going through some of the Queen of Peace, a lot of these are like really good to belt to.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Hiding is kind of a minor song, but
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Make Up Your Mind, also kind of a B-side,
I also feel like
but I really
I
like
never
that one.
properly answered your question earlier if I had any favorite songs on this album, Everybody Scream, which, like, I think I need to listen to it more before I have very specific favorites.
Yeah.
But I really like Everybody Scream is great. One of the greats in Music by Men are great for that kind of like provocativeness that they immediately grab you with. But I also like Sympathy Magic, for whatever reason, like is kind of an earworm for me, and I like that about it.
Yeah.
I also like the chamber version of it. How like I think the chamber version is a little more gentle or a little more.
Mhm.
uh it has almost a more like pastoral quality to it, and I think there is that the song that has like these super poetic lyrics at one part. There are some lyrics on this album. Yeah, I think it's the and a light coming in the window just so, and the wind through my fingers, the only God that I know, and it does not want me on my knees to believe. Like she'll have this imagery sometimes where it's just so evocative, and I'm like ugh, the
Okay, you're
poetry.
gonna love this. I happened to be on Genius
Mhm.
earlier, and Sympathy Magic, crouched in a ball gown, anxious and ashamed, was inspired by the movie Carrie.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
So like there's a whole other level of stuff going
Yeah,
on in here. And I was like, whoa, I did not even know that.
yeah.
That's wild.
Kraken is also great, and I remember I think the first ones you mentioned to me that you really liked were the Old Religion and another
Yeah.
one. I again I particularly love the chamber version of the Old Religion because it is already evoking that with the lyrics, and then to put it in that setting of like chamber music, it's so good.
I also really like Perfume and Milk, but that's a very low key, almost slightly ominous song. And it feels like it's very much about grief,
Yeah.
as it might be.
Uh-huh.
And
And
you know, so
Buckle is another one. That one is more on the like softer, intimate side of things, and is very grounded and feels very real. Her talking about the this relationship that she was in.
Mitski co-wrote that one, so
Yeah.
that checks out for me. Apparently, in the last couple of years, Mitski had moved to Nashville, and so there's slightly more of
Oh,
a country influence in her most recent album.
gotcha.
Because I saw the most recent album, and I thought I need to get into Mitski, and I was like, this isn't really hitting for me, and that's because country doesn't usually hit for me. So I
Mhm.
went back to her earlier stuff, and there's an album that has a lot more of a like an 80s synthesizer kind of
Yeah.
vibe. And I went, okay, this is the one. We live in this now. That's the one.
Mhm.
Because like I said, either here or on the previous episode, like I grew up in the 80s. That was my
Yeah.
entire childhood. That shaped my taste in music.
Mhm.
So anyway, Florence has a ton, and the machine as well.
Yes.
Has do not ever forget the machine. uh what was the tag on that post? Love Florence the Machine when they are Florencing and machining. I was like, indeed. Like she has a very specific, or not specific, a very confident sound. It's a very signature sound, but she does a lot of different things. She also did a cover of Just a Girl, the No Doubt song.
Mhm.
That's got some rage in it that's
Yeah, I can imagine.
really really great. But she does a lot of different things, and I think if you go back through some of her earlier stuff, I think you'll have a lot to chew on.
Yeah.
It's You'll have some enrichment in your
Mhm.
enclosure. It'll be pretty good.
And I appreciate it. I can always use more
Okay.
enrichment in my enclosure.
Happy holidays! So
Happy
much enrichment.
holidays. Yeah,
What a
this is
gift. There
probably
we go.
coming out after the holidays, but
It is. Always holidays. 12 days of Christmas. It's something. We'll figure
uh,
it out. All the way to Epiphany. We'll figure it
we'll
out.
figure it out.
It's fine.
All right. I think that brings us to the end of our episode. Cleo, do you want to take us out? Well, do you want to mention again the plugs, the places where people can find you?
Um, I actually did write about Howl on my Tumblr because I live there now, and it's better than Twitter. Uh,
Yes.
I have heard they're trying to put together something called New Twitter because
Oh, geez.
X hasn't been using the name Twitter, and so these people are arguing they've given up the trademark
Hmm.
and they're trying to get it from them.
Interesting.
And I signed up to get a new Twitter handle. I was like, sure, I'm behind this. Anyway, I am Cleo Linda on Twitter if you're still there, and I'm very sorry. Blue Sky, Cleo Linda, Tumblr, Cleo Linda, Patreon, Cleo Linda, Twitch, Cleo Linda Jones, and I will be there on my tiny little streamer stage, uh, probably at least once a week once I kind of get a schedule going.
Mm-hmm.
But we're gonna play some fun story-based horror games that are shorter. We could do in 1 or 2
Yeah.
streams, 3 to 6 hours, that kind of thing. It'll be super fun. I promise I won't sing. I I'll get copyright struck, so I won't do that anyway. Ian, what are you doing?
I just realized I think I might have said this wrong last episode. On Patreon, I am Ian Doherty. It's just patreon.com/Ian Doherty, where you can
There's some
find.
text on screen. It's
Yeah,
fine.
there will be text on screen. But that's where you can find me posting about like all the stuff that I'm releasing, whether it's the staying on theme videos, music analysis videos, the unfinished paintings that I just started posting specifically for Patreon, which are old demos of mine. Some may have turned into things I've released. Some may be things that will never see the light of day. That felt very Scar. Oh man. But there's that stuff. There's early looks at other stuff. I am also on social media, iDoherty451. I still technically have a Twitter account, but I haven't posted there since I retreated back to Tumblr, where you can also find me as iDoherty451. That's IDOHERTY 451. That's also what I am on YouTube, on Twitch. I am planning on starting my Twitch channel, Twitch streaming stuff back up in January. So by the time you're hearing this, I've probably already started back up. I should be streaming Silent Hill 4. I might be streaming Silent Hill F. And I might have started doing Blueprints Mondays because I'm obsessed with blueprints. And I need to
Ooh.
give myself a reason. I need to make myself feel less bad about playing it so much by streaming it and turning it into content. Um, but
You're just sharing the joy. It's not
yeah.
about turning it into a content mill. It's sharing the joy
Mhm.
of blueprints,
Yes.
which I will buy when we have the end of the year Steam sales.
Yeah.
It'd be so exciting.
But yeah, that game is so much more of a rabbit hole than I was expecting. But it's a rabbit hole that I'm very much enjoying. You can also find my music on YouTube, the same place that I was talking about before. You can also find it at mosaicmindband.com. That is where my current band. My stuff is on Bandcamp and on Spotify. Like Spotify is not the greatest, but it is there. So if you listen on there, like maybe someday I can get enough money to make a cent off of Spotify. But if you want to support me more directly, you can buy my stuff through Bandcamp, iandoherty.bandcamp.com, ramschiali.bandcamp.com, and I'm sure Mosaic Mind will also have Bandcamp at some point. Anything else? Oh yeah, and all this stuff. If all those links and names and social media platforms were overwhelming, you can just go to ian-doherty.com and you'll find all of that stuff there, and you'll find links to stuff that I've previously done, like Matter of Taste. Yeah, I think that is all of it. This is part of why I think I haven't had more success on the internet, is because I spread myself too thin and I've tried too many different things, and now I'm finally kind of wrangling it into one place with my website and Patreon.
We are very productive people. Do not ever say we are not interesting people. And we
Very
want to
true.
try all the things.
Exactly.
That's our fatal flaw. But Again, that's why I like having the Patreon, and I encourage people to just
Yeah.
follow it for the free weekend links and the free
Yeah.
game content that doesn't belong to me, because it is kind of a hub where
Yeah.
you can, you know what's going on.
Yeah, and the staying on theme stuff is always going to be free because, like you were saying with your stuff, like anything that's like video game or some sort of copyrighted thing, like just so that we don't get into legal trouble, we'll leave that stuff free.
So there's lots of stuff.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff. And we do stuff together. So
It is also where you'll get
well, you're
updates on this
here.
very podcast.
Yeah. You're here, so you know that.
Yes.
But all right, I have to go feed my dog. So we're going to,
Go
who you
do
heard
that.
barking
Yeah.
through the episode. That's Cooper.
Yeah.
Sometimes he tries to keep me from playing games. He tries to knock my hand off the mouse when I get too into it. So I'm going to go check on him. I hope, Ian, you have a good evening.
Yeah, you too.
And I look forward to, I was about to say, seeing you guys again. You're actually listening to us, but we love to see you. If you want to drop by, leave some comments. What music you like? Did you like a song on the album? Did you like a Florence song we didn't talk about? Let us know. We're glad to see you.
Yep.
And until next time,
take care and thanks for listening.
we're incorrigible. We're awful people. We didn't even get to Frankenstein. What are we doing?